So in this video, we're going to talk about power of 10 to standard form, going from a power 10 and changing it into standard form. So let's see what that looks like. What is the power of 10? You can think of a power of 10 as something with a base and an exponent. Together they form a power, but the base is always 10. So you see in these examples, you have 10 to the n power, where n can equal anything. 10 to the third power would be another example of a power of 10. 10 to the negative 5 power, another example of a power of 10. So it could look it could have a positive or a negative exponent, and the base is always, the base meaning the big number is always a 10. So that's what a power of 10 equals. It's the base plus an exponent. Together they're a power, and the exponent can be positive or negative. Standard form will either be a whole number or a decimal. So standard form could look like either one. So a whole number meaning, like, for example, 100,000, that's a whole number. A decimal, 0.0001, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, that's 1/10,000. That's written as a decimal. So either one of these are in standard form. So we're going to be going from something that looks like this, and we're going to put it into either one of these. And let's take a look at how we do that. Basically, let's look at some things with a positive exponent first. So to go from power of 10 to standard form, let's say you have a power of 10, that's 10 to the third power. Well, what does that really mean? That means 10 times 10 times 10. And if we multiply that out, that equals 1,000. So simple enough, standard form. 10 to the third power in standard form would be 1,000. Okay, what about 10 to the second power? Well, that just means 10 times 10, which is equal to 100. Okay, so in standard form, 10 squared, or 10 to the second power, is 100. What about 10 to the first power? Well, 10 to the first power is just 10 written once, and sometimes you'll see it as 1 times 10, which is simply 10. 10 to the 0 power is just 1. Okay, because in all of these, there's kind of that invisible one there. So it's 1 times these things. Well, now it's 10 to the 0 power. We know it's not 10 to the first power, which is 10. 10 to the 0 power is simply that 1. So anything, in fact, to the 0 power is a 1, no matter what the base is. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So those are with positive exponents. Okay, so when you have power of 10 and you want to go to standard form, notice we're dealing now with negative exponents. In the last example, all the exponents were positive. These are all negative. Well, what happens here? Well, to get this exponent, which is negative, to rewrite it as a positive exponent, the only way we could do that is to get its reciprocal. So what do I mean by that? I mean, 10 to the negative 3 becomes 1 over 10 to the third power. That's all that is. It's a reciprocal, because you know this would be 10 over 1, really, right? So the reciprocal would be 1 over 10 to the third power. Well, what does that mean? That means 1 over 10 times 1 over 10 times 1 over 10, which is 1 over 1,000. Now 1 over 1,000, 1 over 1,000, if you rewrote that as a decimal, you would get tens, hundreds, thousands, 0.001. So this is standard form also. In our last examples with the positive exponents, we got like a whole number. Now we're getting a decimal form. Let's try another one. 10 to the negative 2. Well, that would become 1 over 10 squared. Again, I got the reciprocal. It took this whole thing and just made the exponent positive. Well, what does that equal? Well, that equals 1 over 10 times 1 over 10, 2 times, and which equals 1 over 100. And to write 1/100ths, it would be 0.001 0, 1, tens, hundreds. Okay, again, standard form. So we took the power of 10 and we put it into standard form. Let's try one more. 10 to the negative 1. Well, I'm going to do the same thing. Take that whole thing and put it under a 1, which is getting the reciprocal, and it's just 1 over 10, which is 1/10. It made it a positive number. We don't have to really rewrite the 1, but we do know that 1/10 can be written as a decimal like that. Okay, so that's it. We rewrote the negative exponents into standard form. And just looking back again, notice that the positive exponents were written into standard form, but they look differently. They're in standard form in terms of a whole number. So when you have a positive exponent, you get a whole number. When you have a negative exponent, you get a decimal. That's it. Just replay it, do a couple examples, and it should all make sense.